Good morning again, congregants and friends. It is always a joy to be with you here in person at the Bristol and being their guests and receiving their generosity, and also with all of our community on Zoom. So our topic today is when awareness becomes holy. And I'd like to talk about awareness, but not in a self-help concept, or as something that might be deemed intellectual. I'd like to talk about what might be sacred about it. So many of the most life-changing choices we make don't begin with courage. They begin with awareness. For us Unitarian Universalists, awareness is the doorway in which freedom enters our lives and invites us to impact love and change in the world around us. Before we can decide to act or make any choice, we have to be aware that that choice is available. I'm going to say that again. Before we can decide to act or make a choice, we have to be aware that that choice is available. We are limited by the choices we believe we have. I see some nodding heads. You nodding online as well? Yeah. I'd like to share an example, a personal example. When I was a teenager, I was raised in the Armenian Church. Most of you know that, Eastern Orthodox. I came to a point where I just did not believe in my religion that I was raised in, and nor did I feel an affinity or belief for any other religion at this point, maybe my late teens. So I announced to my friends in the world around me that I am an atheist. And I was very clear on that, because the only options I had was to either follow a religion or be an atheist. There wasn't another option, at least none that I knew of. Yet, as the years went on, I felt this continued curiosity about if life continues after we leave this world, or if there's some way we are connected to one another beyond our bodies, even while we're here. And this curiosity drew me to explore, and I became exposed to the world of in between, or a whole nother option, and that's spirituality, which eventually, after maybe 40 years of exploring this, give or take, it drew me to become an inter-spiritual minister and be here to walk this path with all of you. Had I not had that option, I would not be here, right? One of the extraordinary aspects of being a Unitarian Universalist is our freedom to explore religious and spiritual perspectives. It opens us to the awareness of the many possibilities, the many perspectives that could be available to us. There's a common story that's probably more an urban legend than science, but most of us have heard this, about fleas in a jar. They say that if you put a bunch of fleas in a jar, they'll jump to the top where the cover is. And if you take the cover off, so this saying is, the fleas will still only jump to as far up as the cover was. They'll never jump out. Now, I don't know if this is actually true about the fleas, but it's a great story and it never gets old, and somehow it could move us into an analogy that we could be a lot like fleas, at least in that story. So I looked up the story, and then I found out it wasn't true, but I just loved the story, so I had to share it with you all. It's my confession. But there's something to that story, right? Many of us move through life with a kind of default setting. And if you don't know what I mean by the term default is the term we use in the computer world. That is that's where you automatically go to. If you open up a program, it has a default setting. That's the starting point. And in our lives, that default can show up as the limits on how we think, on how we tend to think, react, or believe. Awareness is about noticing something more. It's about recognizing that aside from whatever we are experiencing or choosing, another choice may be present. And this brings me to a story I'd like to explore with you. Has anybody ever heard of Plato's Allegory of the Cave? Please raise your hand. Okay, we have a bunch of people saying yes, a bunch of people on Zoom, yes. Well, first I'd like to share what an allegory is for anybody that might not know. An allegory is a story that symbolizes a deeper meaning, and it invites us to explore either the spiritual or philosophical lessons that might be in that story. So Plato's story goes like this. I'm going to paraphrase his story. A group of men have spent their entire life chained together, facing a wall in a cave. I mean, it's a story, so I mean, it can't be true, like the fleas, but anyway. But there's something to this teaching. They cannot turn their heads, they can only look directly at the cave wall. That's all they can see. And on the cave wall, they see shadows. And the shadows are caused by people walking back and forth behind them between a fire. That is, there's a fire that casts their shadows on the wall in front of them. So these men begin to give these shadows names. They begin to build meaning around these shadows. And the shadows are the only reality that these people that are chained together in this cave know. Somehow, one day, one of these people, one man, we use men in this story, gets loose. And he finds his way out of the cave. And when he does, his first experience of daylight is completely disorienting, confusing, and it's painful to his eyes because he's only been in a cave his whole life. But eventually he could see. He could see the world around him. And he is astonished by what he sees. So he finds his way back to tell the others. So he gets back in. But when he gets in there, he is not welcomed as a hero. Instead, he is ridiculed. He is treated, he's completely doubted, ridiculed, and he's actually threatened by them. Because those in the cave find this other reality that he's sharing a threat. The shadows are safer to the people in the cave than the idea of something else. So now traditionally, this story is told as a lesson about ignorance or truth versus ignorance. But today I would like to share a different perspective in the lesson. So the people in the cave are not foolish. They're faithful to what they've been shown. They're faithful to what they knew, right? And they've done their best with the knowledge that was available to them. In the allegory of the cave, the chained men believe that there's no other option, there's no other world, because they have no awareness of it. Even when they are told that it existed, the alternative option to them was a threat, and they argued for their limitation. They argued for the story they knew. That was all they knew. Somehow, we individuals can be chained as well. Chained by our own limited possibilities. Leaving the cave is painful. Growth almost always is painful. Awareness interrupts habits. It disrupts certainty. It invites us to ask questions we didn't know we could even ask. And yet, without change, we remain chained by what we have assumed. This is where awareness becomes spiritual or holy, because awareness is not about judgment. It's about exposure. It's about opening It's about opening. Think about the ways this shows up in our lives, in our personal lives. Awareness changes everything. We might suddenly realize that a pattern we've always accepted as the only option, that doesn't serve us, is not the only option. We might realize that a boundary we thought was impossible to create for our own well-being, we can create. That a story we've told ourselves about our lives, about our worth, about our limitations, or our role in the world, is not the only narrative, or it's not the entire story of who we are, and it might not even be the real story of who we are. It's through awareness that we can embrace another story. In our moral lives, awareness opens choices about where we spend our energy, our silence, and our courage. Once we see injustice, neutrality is no longer neutral. And this is an important thing to state, specifically this weekend, Martin Luther King's birthday. Once we notice suffering, we are changed, even if we do not know yet what action to take. I see some heads nodding. When I was a young person, and I'm going to give another confession in a sense. When I was a young person working in New York City, I didn't know better. I would pass people experiencing homelessness, and I judged them as lazy. I judged them as lazy. I said, gee, I'm not going to give them money. I have to get up and go to work. What, they're sleeping. As if it was their choice. As if this was their intentional choice of their lives. My understanding was limited. I was not aware. I eventually realized that the majority of people experiencing homelessness didn't choose their situation. I became aware that people, as I did, would just look away from people that were homeless, just glance in the other way. And ultimately, I realized that those experiencing homeless were our lepers of our world these days. Lepers. Just like in the days of St. Francis, that he stayed a mile away from the lepers so he didn't have to see them or maybe catch their suffering or experience their suffering. The homeless that's the way they are often treated in our culture. And this awareness or awakening, finally, it changed me. And I began, at some point in my life, I guess in my years of ministry, I began to go out of my way intentionally looking for people in the street to feed or to sit with so that they would feel seen, nurtured, or cared for. As Maya Angelou reminds us, when you do better, when you know better, you do better.
Amen.
Amen. Right? How many people have heard that saying? I see some hands going up. Very nice. When you know better, you do better. In our spiritual lives, awareness asks us to notice what stories we believe about meaning, belonging, and purpose. It invites us to consider that the holy might be larger, more generous, and more alive, and more loving than we ever thought it could be. So I ask us, what shadows are we mistaking for truth? What light might be uncomfortable for us to look at, but liberating? What choices are waiting for us just beyond what we have learned to see? Plato's Allegory reminds us that when the light first shifts, discomfort is often our initial response. Not because something is wrong, but because something is changing. And change asks something of us. It asks, In moments of transition, our instinct is often to ask, what will we lose? And that's kind of normal, right, everybody? When something's changing, people are often uncomfortable. It's a human question, and it's a very honest one. But awareness invites us to another question, to stand alongside of that. What becomes possible now that we see more than we did before? What becomes possible now that there is something more to see than we saw before? So as many of you know, this week an email went out to the congregation and friends that I will be transitioning from my position as minister of the congregation this year. And making this decision in the midst of the deep love that I hold for all of you has not been an easy one. This is a time of change and growth for all of us. A congregation is not one moment, one chapter, or one leader. It is a living, breathing community shaped by shared values, by commitment, and by the willingness of each of us to show up, imagine, and create what comes next. This work has never belonged to one person. The heart and future of this community lives with all of you, with all of us. Awareness gives us choice. It doesn't ask us to have all the answers. It simply invites us to notice that we can imagine, and we can imagine what we can do together and how we could care for one another. Communities grow and last not by holding on to the past, but by waking up again and again to what is possible and what is possible now. So in closing, I invite us into a season of holy awareness. May we step forward together into the unfolding light of who we are becoming. And may we trust that this shared awareness will continue. This shared awareness will continue to guide this congregation towards growth, loving connection, and a deeper experience of being truly a beloved community. Thank you, everyone, and may it be so. If you like this video, please like us on YouTube, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and click on the bell to be notified whenever we post a new video. Thank you.